What I want to try and explain to people today is some tools, some free tools that you can use, some of which might have been taught to you in school at some point. But unfortunately, most of the time in school, they weren't really showing you how to appropriately use them or when to appropriately use them. And that's what I want to get into today. And like I said, these are free tools that you weren't taught specifically about in school. You won't read about them very much in articles. Uh, Different talking heads out there don't talk about these things. And the reason why is because they're using them. Okay. And I'm just sitting here in an old antique chair that I'm working on restoring. Um, Thought it'd be a perfect place for a good casual conversation. One of the things I think that is most oftenly seen is NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And because our mind and our subconscious will grab onto things and absorb things that we don't even realize. And when I say neuro linguistic programming, these neurons that they don't only pick up only the things that are said or the oral speech, such as people repeating things and stuff like that, but they also pick up the visual. And that's probably one of the most important things to comprehend because a lot of lies are often given visually because we know that people feel like they've got to spread the truth. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more towards the end of this and demonstrate it for you because some may be employed here. One of the things that I've noticed a lot of times is that people go and they pick up some shiny object, some little nugget of something that they think, oh, this is what it's all about, this is the truth or whatever. And so they run with it and they start spreading it everywhere. And they need to pay closer attention to where they're finding this source at, who it is, what it is that's really being said. And I'll go to something that I think was taught to a lot of people in school was who, what, when, where, and why. Okay, let's unpackage that a little bit. When we come across a piece of information, we need to think about who it is that is giving this to us. Who are they? Is it just a talking head on TV? Is it somebody that is really a popular writer? Um, who are they really? Well, what do they belong to? Do they belong to any organizations or anything like that? Is there an agenda possibly behind what they have that they're trying to propagate? Okay. You'll notice that many of the talking heads, for instance, on the news, they're members of the CFR. And the CFR has an agenda that they're trying to push. Behind them is like the World Health Organization. Um, you've got to really pay close attention to who's behind them. And now onto the what. Well, what is it that they are pushing? What is it they are talking about? I think it's obvious to people that if you watch mainstream media, you will quickly see that the same thing is talked about over and over. Yeah, you could turn off the news today, turn it back on a month from now, and they're repeating the same thing. The same what? You go into when. Well, they're propagating this what at a specific time for a certain reason. And there's also the where. Where is it being propagated at? You will find that a lot of the things that are spread in certain regions of the country and certain regions of the world are much different from each other. For instance, you can go and watch the History Channel in Asia and learn about Christopher Columbus, and they're going to show a black man. It's totally different from what we would be used to in the United States of America. And you have to think about the why behind all of this. Why? It's because there's an agenda. There's something that they are trying to push. There's something that they're trying to get across, a line of thinking. This is, like I spoke about before, the demoralization of a culture, the destabilization, ultimately, really the destabilization of a culture, because you are much more malleable if you can be destabilized. With these five items, I think about one of the things that Dr. Day said. He was part of, if you want to call him the elite or whatever, he talked about this over 50 years ago. And he said that repeatedly in his speech, he said the problem is that people don't ask the right questions. And that's the thing. We have to start asking the right questions. We know that signs and symbols rule the world, and very often we let those things trigger us. We shouldn't let those necessarily trigger us as much as we do. People see a rainbow and their minds automatically go somewhere. And they see a pyramid, their minds automatically go somewhere. See how these things have been used? One of the other tools, now I've mentioned one, NLP, neuro linguistic programming. Number two, following the who, what, when, where, and why. And each of those could be gone deeper into, and this could be a 2 hour discussion. But I think people can use their own mind and think for themselves and think deeper into those. And number three is what's referred to as a scientific method, which I really don't have a problem with. Is it measurable? Is it observable? Is it repeatable? To make this simple, I just put this into one acronym: MORE. MOR. We should always be asking for more. Is it measurable? Is it observable? And is it repeatable? Do we find this same source info that we've stumbled across, this shiny object? Do we find this in other places? Are other people showing examples of it? Number four, I think, ties into the above three. And that is something that's not taught. It's taught more within different organizations, different agencies, okay, if you will. And what they look at when they're trying to find something out, that they measure things in three different levels. One is information. Number two is knowledge. And number three is intelligence, intel, okay, which is sometimes false, maybe a lie. You don't know. So to look at info, if you go online, for instance, to look for, say, a recipe for apple pie, you're going to find a plethora of recipes for apple pie. Does that mean each one of them is the best, that they're exact? No, it doesn't. But there's tons of information on any topic out there, and not all of it will be the best. You know, not all of it will be the most accurate. And then the number two I mentioned is knowledge. Knowledge is information that's been kind of refined down and proven that, yes, this is the best apple pie. This is the best way to make it. This piece of information is valuable. It is usable. And then you go to the third level, which is intelligence. And intelligence, I've mentioned this briefly before, but intelligence has one main characteristic to it: it's secret. Not everybody knows about it. In fact, very, very few people know about it. It's normally compartmentalized, and it's not for the general public. It may only be just for the public. And a lot of people need to realize that there's a difference between the general public and the public. Uh, to explain that briefly, the general public would be like who they talked about, Joe Sixpack on the street. Okay. Your everyday person. That's your general public. Your public would be the people who are working for the state, the people who are working for the government. That's why you hear them referred to as public officials. That's why the courthouse is referred to as a public courthouse, a public building. It's not for the general public, it's held by and run by the public. If it's for the general public could use it for whatever they want. They could hold their own court. See the difference? Your local park, that's for the general public, but it's run by the public. That's why it's called a public park. Because the public makes the rules, what you can, what you can't do there, and what time it opens, what time it closes. Okay? There's a difference between public and general public. Like I said, with a lot of these people, you've got to really know their background, and you've got to comprehend one main thing when we come across info from some of these people is we have to first know where they're from. I have a lot of times I've shared info that may come from an attorney, it may come from somebody like in the military, and people will freak out. It triggers them. And they say, oh no, the attorneys lie. They all lie. They are torn. Don't you know that? Well, you know what? This is a good thing. That doesn't mean you run from them. I have people, they're like, oh, well, that person's a Zionist, or, that guy, he's MLK. He's in mind control. He comes from MLK. You know what? Good. That's a great thing to know because that lets you know what direction they're coming from, what their particular angle is, and so it gives you an idea of what their agenda might be, which makes it easier to listen to them. I remember I've mentioned before, I would have in the background like radio, talk radio or something playing. And I remember one time Rush Limbaugh was on. And it was just loud enough that I could hear it. And because I listened to some of these people, because I know that they will drop little hints of knowledge or intel, but you have to listen for them. So I have it just loud enough that, I'll hear some of these things. And I remember one time, I don't remember what Rush Limbaugh was talking about, but he said, well, in my opinion, as a change agent, that perked my ears because I knew what a change agent was. You're going to find very little info, very, very little knowledge, and zero intelligence about them online. But change agents are people that are notable in the community or in entertainment that are literally deemed a change agent because they will sway the minds of people and they will help to destabilize a people, which makes them more malleable and easier to move. So it's very important to know the direction people are coming from, who and what they are, what's behind them, and what possible agendas can be behind them as well. So you gotta know what they belong to. One of the things that I think is extremely important when you're listening to various people, and the majority of them fall short of this. Myself, anything I write, I always try to give background info for it, where I got this at. You can go look at it yourself because you shouldn't automatically believe anybody. You should be able to check their work. I remember when I was in school, if a teacher thought I was being dishonest or something like that in math, they want to say, well, where'd you get the answer? Let me see your work. Well, we need to look at people's work, okay? Do they provide references? This is where I got this from. This is where these are 4, 5, 6 resources where I located this at. Are they providing that to you? That's extremely important. If they're not showing you that, then for all you know, they're just dreaming this up off the top of their head. And you know what? The majority of them are. Either they're just dreaming it up off the top of their head, or it's part of an agenda belonging to the people who are behind them that they want to propagate to the general public. Something very extremely important to pay attention to. But we've got to realize that the New World Order and the One World Government or Antichrist or the Beast, these things that we're told to look out for, you're told to look out for them for a very good reason. Because it keeps your attention looking on the outside when these things have been here for a very long time already. It used to be very dangerous to be in, say, a government setting, to be king or even a diplomat. Those were short-lived careers. They had their heads cut off. They got rid of them. Either a military coup or another family member would come in and do that. It was dangerous. They had to move to a new world order, a new order. Think of the word order. People standing in line. Who's next? Who's next? So you're still giving somebody from the same bloodline, but more importantly, you're giving somebody that will follow the agenda of the powers that be. And finally, I want to say, just to keep this short, is the info that you're finding, is what you think is knowledge or intel that you're finding, is it actionable information? Is there anything you can do with it? For instance, you can go into court and yell and scream, "Oh, I see that gold fringe flag behind you." And the judge is like, "Yeah, and the sky's blue too, so what?" Moving right along. A lot of this stuff is actually useless information. It may have a place, there may be a purpose behind it, but is it really usable? I said that in the beginning that at the end, I was going to talk a little bit more about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I've seen a lot of people that I'll listen to them talk, and they'll repeat the same thing. They'll say the same line like 3 times. And they'll talk a little bit more, and they'll repeat another line like 3 times. It's because they're trying to put it in your head. And it very well could be a lie. It could be very well false. But if you hear it enough, you're going to start believing it. And I talked about visual. I won't try and imitate Bill Clinton, but he would say, "These things we must understand are the facts. We all comprehend these are facts." So every time he did this, your mind went to facts. Another recent leader would use his hands a lot, say, this is it. People, you gotta, guess what? That's something that's playing with your mind. So that when they do this, you're going to feel that they're giving you the God's honest truth. I started this video and I've been wearing these blue blocker glasses on top of my head. I don't wear glasses. These are just blue blockers. When I'm up at night on the computer, they help protect my mind and my eyes. But if you were to look for me at, say, an event or something like that, and you've pretty much maybe only watched this video, you might expect to see Brian with glasses. See how that plays into your head? This evening, when I talked about people being dishonest or possibly lying, I made a gesture like this every time. So, whenever that gesture is made, your subconscious is going to think dishonesty, lying. These are simple tools that they use against everybody. We need to start paying attention to this stuff. But we need to start making sure we know who, what, when, where, and why this information is being presented. We need to make sure it's measurable, it's observable, it's repeatable. We need to discern whether this is just info, which is just noise and garbage, or if it's real knowledge, or if this is some serious intel that we're getting. Pay attention to all these things. Anyway, I just want to keep this short and sweet. Oh, there was another piece of NLP I was using, come to think of it. This picture behind me of the ship lost at sea, the Act of 1666 that was done in England. Why did I use that? People will equate the ship with the banner that is on tactical sovereignty and equate that also with me. That's fine. That's okay. I have no problem with that. But that was a little piece of info that gets passed around a whole lot that is totally false if people look close into it at all. That was done, number one, it was done in 1666. What was that? Almost 400 years ago? And it was done in another country. How does that pertain to us today in America? Or, say if you're in Russia or Ukraine or somewhere like that, or South America or New Zealand, does that really pertain? Has that act been reinstated? Has anybody looked into that? And what that was for was because during the Black Plague, one of the things they felt at that time, see if any of this sounds familiar. One of the things they felt at that time, they were so crazy, they were going to burn the plague out of their country, out of their city. They felt that was the best way to get rid of it. And so they burned London. They had serious fires. And so people fled, they dispersed over different areas, and so they brought in the Act of 1666. If the people came back within 7 years to reclaim their property, good. If not, then it went to somebody else. It kind of reminds me of an event in 1929 that happened in the USA with the stock market crash. As devastating as that was, in our mind, what do a lot of us think that stock market probably crashed by? 90%, 95%, maybe just 80 or 70 or 60%. What was that crash that changed everything? That crash was only 12%. Only a 12% change in the stock market. In fact, it changed by almost 13% in, I think it was 1997, 1998, or I'm sorry, during 2007, 2008, during the housing bubble. It crashed by a full percentage point higher, which means over 100% almost, compared to the 12%. But we don't stop and think critically. We need to start thinking critically. Where are we getting the info from? Who are these people? Are you getting your business information off from Fox Business News, from Sandra Smith? She was an aspiring model. She used to be a swimsuit model. Her best way to get on TV was to join Fox News and read off a teleprompter. You think she really knows anything about economics or business? Absolutely not. There's a lot of, for instance, even, and I could go on this topic, but a lot of TV hosts, there's a lot of very popular radio hosts that they will come right out and tell you that they are an ex-CIA asset. There's a lot of people who don't tell you that. Did Billy Graham ever tell you that he was a CIA asset? You can find it. It's easy to find. Who is he really working for? It wasn't the guy up there. We really need to take this stuff to heart, and I hope I have supplied you with some tools that you can consider and think about when you are looking at things. I had somebody recently who has a upcoming Supreme Court case that was looking for help and things like that. But I was looking at the case, I think, a little different than they were, because the topic or the issue regarding the case, I said, hold on, Supreme Court only accepts X amount of cases a year, very few, and it's expensive. So that means they're only accepting things that fit the what and the when and the why. Is this case, they've already decided what they're going to do with it, I guarantee you. But is this case going to help move the agenda for what they want people thinking and looking at right now? That's the only reason they would accept it. That's it. We need to start thinking critically. Hey, hope everybody has a great evening. I had a lot of people weigh in on the things they wanted to learn about, whether it was PMAs, which I've got a video, 2 videos maybe out there doing that. They want to know also about Law of Nations, which I very well may cover Law of Nations next. We'll see. Very few people were interested in the 50-year-old prophecy, which I find interesting because it shows spot on the prediction that was done by Dr. Richard Day as to where we are today. So I will be getting to those things. So if people were anticipating that, hey, I've not forgotten. You know, everybody just kind of needs to open their eyes a little bit because we've been taught to limit ourselves. We should really be expanding ourselves. What's popular today? TikTok. Little short, tiny videos. Why? They're just trying to help narrow down your space, narrow down how much concentration, how much you're going to use your mind for. It's a tool. Everything is there in place. All of the people that you see, if you're following like big names or whatever on YouTube or real popular artists or real popular authors, they're not big organically. It wasn't a grassroots movement that made them big. They're there on purpose. They're allowed to be there. They're allowed to get that big. You don't get that big without the authority behind you. And why? Because those people are pushing the who, what, when, where, and why. Bottom line. So think twice about these people and listen very closely to the things that they say. Hopefully I've helped. We'll talk to you all later.